you want to know how to help a teen with anger issues? I've done that one before, many times actually. I'm Nicholeen Peck and I teach all over the world about parenting, good communication, how to build strong family bonds, all through the lens of the principle self-government. And in this video, we're talking about anger issues. In this video, we're going to talk about some of the experiences from my life working with teens who had anger control problems and what are some of the things that you can do to help someone overcome some of their anger issues too. Now, the first thing that we need to understand is about anger. When a person goes to anger as their go-to emotion, it's likely because it has just become a habit. Of course, anger is a real emotion. It's something that every person can experience, and it is a good signal that something needs to be fixed or that somebody needs to be understood. However, there are some people that anger is not rare. It's very, very common. In fact, to solve all of their problems, they go to anger, they go to blame, and they do not take any type of a self-awareness focus. They don't say, what can I do to change it? Instead, they just get mad. So it is important to help a person who struggles with an anger habit to recognize that they can change their thought patterns and change some of their actions and then end up changing their outcomes. For many years, I did therapeutic treatment care for troubled teens. And so teens ages 12 to 18 came to my home. Sometimes they stayed for a few weeks, sometimes they stayed for a few months, sometimes it was a year or more. The majority of the most difficult cases were the ones who struggled with anger management or anger control issues, which is what we called it at the time. These teens were brought to my home for therapeutic treatment because they were considered to be some of the most difficult cases the state had. So oftentimes they had histories of trauma or abuse. They also were neurodiverse oftentimes, and they had issues related to dishonesty like kleptomania, compulsive lying, and then usually did not have a history of having good relationships because of anger control issues. So there were a lot of things going on there. We had to decide what we would help them with first. One of the first things that we decided to address was calmness. Always starting with calmness is a good idea. Helping a person understand what is calm and what is not calm. What does it feel like? What part of your brain are you in when you are calm and when you're not calm? I'm not going to go into a lot of brain function in this video because I do have other videos on this channel related to how the brain works and what to do to get yourself to move from back brain to front brain, which is definitely necessary for helping somebody with anger. So go ahead and check out those videos for additional information on the brain. So if your teen understands calmness, what it means to be calm and feel calm versus what it feels like when they're not calm, and then they also understand how the brain works, they understand how their thought processes can encourage or discourage certain emotional responses, because our thoughts absolutely do help us choose what we want to emote. Our emotions, oftentimes people think come first, but actually thoughts come before emotions. That means that if a person goes straight to an emotional response like anger, they are not paying attention to the place where they actually get to choose. In learning self-government, we teach people how to identify that place where they get to choose. So you'll want to have a conversation with your teen about maybe the last time they went completely out of control, what they felt, then what they thought, then what emotions they experienced, and then what they thought, and then what they did next, and then what they thought, and then what they did next, and see if they can identify the points where they had a thought. That could be difficult at first, but it is definitely possible for them to do, especially if you're patient in that particular communication, so that they can have some time to really reflect on what they might have been thinking. Now, once they've determined what they thought before they had an emotional response, then you can help them challenge that thought. So, is that the only thing that's true? What else might be true? Coming to the truth is important. When a person is going to anger, they're trying to solve their problem by force. It's a control tactic. When a person is calm, they are experiencing the truth of trust. Trust is a principle of self-government, and it's a principle of freedom as well. You have to trust that a person is able to choose calmness if they want to. And that means each person has to trust that about themselves as well as about other people. Teaching the person about calmness, helping them practice the thought processes and when to choose it, and then trusting that they can choose it during the time is going to be incredibly important. But what do you do if a person does not choose to be calm and they choose to be angry instead? Well, you've got to have a process in place to help them through that, to help point them back toward calmness. So if you've already subscribed to this channel, then you know there are so many videos on this channel related to calmness, related to correcting children and to correcting negative behaviors. So you'll want to definitely check out some of those for some additional insights. In this video, what I'm going to tell you is that you just need to have a plan for how you will correct your children. If they know the exact words or script you're going to do for a correction, and they know their skill set that they need to do, which is the skill accepting consequences, and maybe the skill disagreeing appropriately if needed, then also they will be able to be prepared to communicate with you if need be, especially if they disagree with you about something. But hopefully you can prepare them to accept consequences. Now, if not, if they go completely to back brain and it's like hard to reach them, then probably what they need is an intensive teaching skill, which we teach, called the rule of three. In the rule of three, you do 3 things 3 times. You do a pre-teach, an instruction, and then a correction if necessary. Sometimes you might end up doing a praise or something. Now, there are some other little nuances that can happen. Some people can play that skill, and so you have to be prepared with some of the details, like what do you do if they get calm, but then they go right back out of control? Then what do you do? Well, you know at that point it's a choice, and they know it's a choice too, and they're just playing you. You have to be prepared for that as well. And the TSG course goes into all of those particulars to help you with those things. You need to have the words to say in the plan. Now, you might think, words? When my child is that angry and out of control, I've got to hold them down. They're so bad. They're a danger to themselves and to other people. I do know some people get that way. And that can be a scary thing. I'm not going to talk here about doing a soft hold, but there is a way to hold a person if necessary, if they're going to be a danger to somebody else or themselves. And you might have to pre-teach them that you would do that if it ever happens. Pre-teaching is really the key. When you have a child with anger control issues or some self-regulation issues, then if you pre-teach them how you're going to handle it way before the time actually occurs, and then you just simply follow through every time, then soon they learn. I mean, some it takes longer than others, but for many it's quite quick that they learn, okay, I'm not doing that. I am going to get myself calm. I'm going to get myself ready. And they become empowered by your consistency and your teaching regularly the same thing again and again. So definitely prepare them ahead of time by doing the pre-teaching. Now, for the most part, being completely calm is going to be the perfect approach for you. Every once in a while, a person needs to see what it looks like to be angry when somebody else is angry. But if an angry person gets argued with, usually that fuels them and it will go back and forth. So one of the things that you want to do is maintain your own calmness as much as possible. But when you are explaining what is happening, like when you're showing them what they're doing, because in a good description, you describe what they're doing and why it wasn't a good idea, and then you describe what they should have done. You tell them what negative consequence they earned, and then you've practiced it the right way. You include praise and some good pre-teaching in that correction. But at the time where you're describing that, step number 1, what they did, you might say, okay, so right now I'm going to do a correction. What you did was you said, nobody cares about me. Nobody ever cares about me. That is not calm. And when you choose to do that, you're pushing yourself to back brain really fast. You'll have a hard time being understood like that. What you should do is keep calm. Now, if you show them exactly what they did, just mimicking some of that emotion and doing it in the same way, if you can do it without making fun of them or without getting too emotional yourself, can actually be very productive. Now, most of the time, you just want to stay calm. If you can't, mimic that back and then go right back into calmness. That can take some practice. I know it took me a little bit to be able to do that, but holding up a mirror is really nice. I know some psychologists will suggest, well, if somebody's coming into my office and they're yelling at me, then I'm going to start yelling at them because now I'm speaking their language and now they know, oh no, who's going to help me now if we're both yelling? But this is different when it's parent and child than when it's therapist and client. And I also think that there is a feeding that happens with that energy. In fact, I know that's true. It feeds escalation. So the more you can do to not escalate against the child, the more they go, okay, I'm really just fighting myself here. So the only time I would show any emotion is if you're showing them what they're doing. Your children do not want to be angry all the time. They might be addicted to it. It might even give them an endorphin rush when they do it. But afterward, they really do wish that there was another way that didn't take so much energy to get understood. And you need to be understanding of them when they disagree appropriately, when they use their skills. And then you won't probably have as many experiences where they're getting out of control. If they know they can be understood a different way, think how wonderful that is. So teach them those 4 basic skills of self-government, and that can be so powerful for them. Now, if you have stayed to the end of this video, I have a special gift for you. There is a Calm Parenting Toolkit that's in the description that's attached to this video. And in the description, there's a link that says teachselfgov.com/toolkit. If you go to that link right now, you can have my Calm Parenting Toolkit for free, which is 10 tools for calmness. They should help you in the moment and even give you some tools to help your child in the moment. It's not the full Teaching Self-Government course by any means, but it's a great beginning to help you and your family start to learn calmness. So click on that link now. I'll see you there.